In 2002, Elon Musk was down to his last few $1 million. He put almost all of it into a rocket company most experts thought would fail. 16 years later, that same man was the richest person on Earth. This is how a kid from Pretoria, South Africa went from selling code for pocket money to building the company that would send astronauts to the space station, and why the real story is less about genius and more about betting everything twice and almost losing it all. Elon Musk was born in 1971 in Pretoria, South Africa. His childhood was not easy. He was bullied badly at school, and by his own account he escaped into books, sometimes reading 10 hours a day. Encyclopedias, science fiction, anything he could find. At age 10, he got his first computer. By 12, he had taught himself to code well enough to build a simple space game called Blastar and sold the code to a computing magazine for about $500. At 17, Musk left South Africa for Canada, partly to avoid mandatory military service under the apartheid government, and partly because he believed the United States was where the future was being built. He worked odd jobs in Canada, including shoveling grain in a lumber mill, then transferred to the University of Pennsylvania, where he studied physics and economics. He was already telling friends he wanted to work on three things: the internet, clean energy, and space. In 1995, Musk dropped out of a PhD program at Stanford after just 2 days to chase the internet boom. With his brother Kimball, he founded Zip2, an early online city guide business, basically a digital yellow pages for newspapers. They lived in the office and showered at the local YMCA to save money. In 1999, Compaq bought Zip2 for about $307 million. Musk's personal share was around $22 million. He was 27. Musk didn't slow down. He put most of that money into a new company called X.com, an online banking startup. X.com merged with a rival called Confinity, and together they became PayPal. But Musk clashed with other executives over technical decisions, and in 2000, while he was on his honeymoon, the board removed him as CEO. He stayed on as PayPal's largest shareholder anyway. In 2002, eBay bought PayPal for $1.5 billion in stock. After taxes, Musk walked away with roughly $180 million. Most founders in his position would have taken the win and relaxed. Musk did the opposite. He took nearly all of that money and split it between two new ventures almost nobody believed in, a rocket company and an electric car company. That same year, 2002, Musk founded Space Exploration Technologies, SpaceX, with the stated goal of making humanity a multiplanetary species. 2 years later, in 2004, he invested millions into a small electric car startup called Tesla Motors, joining as chairman and its largest investor. He moved to Los Angeles and worked between both companies, often sleeping at the SpaceX factory. Almost everyone in the aerospace industry, and most of Detroit, expected both bets to fail. For a while, it looked like they were right. SpaceX built a rocket called Falcon 1. The first launch in 2006 failed shortly after liftoff. The second in 2007 also failed. The third attempt in August 2008 failed too, this time destroying satellites for paying customers on board. 3 failures in a row is the kind of track record that ends companies. SpaceX had money for one more try, and only one. By late 2008, Musk was, by his own account, nearly broke. He had poured his eBay fortune into SpaceX and Tesla. Both companies were burning cash, and the global financial crisis was crushing credit markets everywhere. Tesla was weeks from running out of money. Musk was reportedly sleeping on a friend's couch and borrowing from other friends just to cover rent. He later said he thought the odds of either company surviving were less than 50%. Then on September 28, 2008, the fourth Falcon 1 launch succeeded. Days later, NASA awarded SpaceX a contract worth $1.6 billion to fly cargo to the International Space Station, a lifeline that kept the company alive. Then, on Christmas Eve of that same year, Tesla closed a funding round just hours before it would have run out of cash entirely. Both companies survived the same brutal year by a matter of days, not months. If either deal had slipped by even a week, this story likely ends very differently. The next decade was a long climb. SpaceX developed the Falcon 9 rocket and in 2015 achieved something no orbital rocket company had done before, landing a booster back on Earth so it could be reused. That single innovation cut launch costs dramatically and let SpaceX outcompete established aerospace giants on price. Meanwhile, Tesla struggled through brutal production problems, including what Musk himself called production hell, but eventually got the Model 3, its first mass-market car, into volume production. Here's the part people often get backwards. Most of Musk's paper fortune did not come from SpaceX, it came from Tesla stock. Tesla shares stayed relatively cheap for years, until around 2020, when the stock surged as investors bet big on electric vehicles, and Tesla was added to a major stock market index. Because Musk held a large personal stake, on paper worth roughly 20% of the company, that single rally made him, for stretches of 2021, the richest person on the planet, even though he'd never sold most of those shares. Here's a common misconception worth correcting directly. SpaceX has never actually gone public. There has been no traditional stock market listing and no Buisgang in the classic sense of the word. What SpaceX has done instead is sell shares privately, through funding rounds and employee tender offers, at valuations that have climbed sharply as its business grew, powered mainly by reusable Falcon 9 launches and its Starlink satellite internet service, which by the mid-2020s was generating billions of dollars a year on its own. Those private valuations reportedly reached the hundreds of billions of dollars, making Musk's SpaceX stake, still private and unlisted, an enormous part of his net worth on paper. So how did Elon Musk get so rich? Not from one lucky idea. He built and sold Zip2, got pushed out of PayPal but still cashed out big, then took nearly everything he had and bet it on two industries, rockets and electric cars, that experts said were dead ends. Both companies nearly collapsed in the same terrible year. Both survived by days, not months. And the wealth that followed, from Tesla's stock and SpaceX's soaring private valuation, came only after he was willing to risk losing everything he had already made twice, on bets almost nobody else was willing to make.